All right, so welcome everybody. Folks are still trickling in, and if you're just joining us, again, just a reminder to please get your worksheet. If you don't have it already, it's been sent in the chat. And let us know if you need help accessing it. Hopefully you've already downloaded it and started to look through it. If you haven't, or even if you have, this is just a moment as we give a few minutes for people to trickle in to go back and look at some of the questions and look through your answers, and just an opportunity to ground yourself in the session that we're about to have today. And yeah, I'll actually put up a slide for us in just a moment. Okay, I think we can just get started. Monica, is there anything you'd like to share before we head right in?
Sure. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here on behalf of ArtsBuild, and also to remind everyone that we do have a Text Goes Home program that's about to kick off for adults through the arts. If you're interested in that, please reach out to Amy Loudermilk at ArtsBuild. Her email is amy@artsbuild.com. I'll happily put that in the chat as well. And since we've had a few more join us, I'm going to put the link in again just to make sure that everyone can see it for the workshop. And again, just thank you to Phoenix Sun for bringing this workshop to us and for working and partnering with us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Monica. And big shout outs to ArtsBuild for putting this initiative together. As you all know, this is an initiative that's a legacy piece coming out of the Equity in the Arts conference that took place 2 weeks ago. If you haven't been able to watch back the conference recording, I highly recommend you do that. The session that I presented in the morning along with the workshops are available online, and you can message Monica, or I think maybe go on the website to find that information. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment so that we can connect with the folks. Welcome everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. And today we are going to be looking at some of the dynamics of what it means to ground your purpose in the work of engaging in community arts education, community arts engagement, and looking at it through the lens of what does it mean to ground ourselves in the work, in how we're moving forward. And it's so lovely to see some of familiar faces. Hello, thank you for being here. And I would like to, first of all, start with grounding us in a land acknowledgement. So I am coming to you from the traditional territories of the Muskogee Creek Nation and lands under Treaty 116. I wish to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on stolen land, living in countries that were built on the foundation of colonization and genocide that continue until today in many forms. I would like to take a moment to honor the legacy of many Indigenous tribes across Turtle Island and invite us to be in solidarity with the communities affected the most by the mass graves discovered this year at residential schools across the northern lands of Turtle Island, and many more that are left buried across this continent. We honor all of our ancestors who have suffered at the hands of imperialism and white supremacy, and invite us to move forward grounded in our histories with the spirit of resilience and social change for the empowerment of all oppressed people in the spirit of and for the greater good of all of humanity and the earth that we live upon. Let us be in our power. So take a moment to take a breath in and ground. Thank you so much. And I will begin our presentation with just a bit of an introduction of myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of Voice of Purpose, and my name is Phoenix. I also go by Sun. I use she, her pronouns. And originally from Korea, now currently living in Atlanta, Georgia, by way of Toronto, Ontario, where I spent most of my life and the work that I've been doing in community arts. And I'm just going to share my screen once again. And if at any point folks have questions about anything, please feel free to put it in the chat. Sorry, I'm just going to try that one more time. Okay. And so this is just a little bit about Voice of Purpose, just a bit about our mission. The core of our work is really about embodying purpose to deepen the impact that we do in the community arts sector. And our mission is to ignite a movement of artist educators and arts organizers and arts organizations to do this deeper work of embodiment, to deepen the work that they're doing in the world. And you know, I've worked in the context of creating and building a lot of different grassroots community arts movements and organizations. And, you know, I've had the privilege of being able to facilitate and collaborate with a lot of leaders across the sector since I started this work back in 2005. And so I hope to just share with you what I can. And for those of you who were not here for the first presentation, I'm just going to go through a really quick overview of some of the principles that we had gone through just to ground ourselves once again in what we are doing today. So this is the larger context. This is the why of the world that we are living, the context of the world that we're in right now, and the context of the work that we're doing in community. The reality is that there is kind of an epidemic of a lost sense of power and purpose in a lot of folks in our communities and across society, a sense of lack of personal agency, and direction in life. And a lot of that is due to the fact that we are living in oppressive systems. There's colonization, racism, heteronormativity, poverty, and a lot of other oppressive systems that trickle down from these things that ultimately cause us to have unhealthy social patterns and norms. And this is the world that we live in right now, is that there's generational trauma, there's broken system support, or lack of support around mental health issues, and ultimately, that's, especially in the era of COVID, a sense of isolation and disconnection that's happened, that is real for folks, and especially for folks who are living in marginalized situations. There's a suppression and erasure of our voices as well that's been going on for generations, which results in a sense of silencing, silos, and also shame. That ubiquitous sense of unworthiness that pervades through so much of our society and our mental health issues. And so this is a framework that I had presented. The language of this actually is evolving. So as Voice of Purpose is evolving, our work is evolving, our frameworks are evolving. So you may recognize this. I presented it under slightly different heading titles in the last presentation, but the core of the framework is essentially the same. So this is when we zoom out and we look at community arts sector, and the purpose of our work as a sector, and what we're doing when we're looking at the transformative aspect of things. So we're not looking at just art technique. We're not looking at art for art's sake. art from an intellectual standpoint. We're talking about the sector of our society, or the sector, the niche, I guess, part within the larger, broader spectrum of community arts that is interested in community development and using the arts as a tool for deeper social engagement. And some others may recognize, this as arts-based community development. That's a term that's used as well, but essentially it's about centering the community and community empowerment as a primary goal, putting community members as centered in decision-making processes and leadership. We're looking for systems change through education and implementation. So this is about equity, accessibility, inclusion, sustainability. And also a lot of the work that we're doing is about providing care and cultivating connection for ourselves and for members of the community and within the House of Holistic Wellbeing. And so that looks like mental and emotional support and building relationships. And also ultimately the work that we're doing is about a shared sense of humanity through the art creation, through the creativity and the culture of the arts, creating a sense of unity through storytelling and empowered self-expression. And so when we bring these 4 areas together, and when they overlap and are brought together in a space, there is a journey of transformation that is possible. And I think this is what we are aiming towards in a lot of the work that we're doing as community arts organizers, arts educators, and arts administrators, at least those of us who are centered around the idea and the goals of equity. And so this is just coming back to the topic of purpose. This workshop is centered around grounding your purpose and grounding our purpose, not just as a sector, but as individuals who are moving forward in the world. And these are just kind of general categories, once again, around how do we approach purpose, because there's an element of the personal, which is about individual and personal life experiences, the micro level of things. And then we have to address things on a systemic level. You come into the individual, you broaden out to the systemic context. And that includes the social, cultural, historical context of the world that we are living in. And so that's the macro context. We look at then the need for integration between the personal and the systemic. And there's a holistic coalescence that is necessary in order for us to come into a deeper understanding and groundedness in our purpose, whether as individuals or as organizations. And then ultimately, we are moving into the realm of creation. Once we've done that work of understanding ourselves, understanding our place in the world, understanding the systems that are around us and the integration piece, then we can move into the space of innovation and birthing something into existence that is going to have greater impact. And so this is the framework that we work with as an organization. It's also the framework that has been outlined for you in your worksheets. This is how do we engage now these categories, now that we've identified these 4 categories of the elements of purpose and the things that we need to consider in grounding and finding our own purpose in our lives. How do we approach this work when it comes to our work in community arts and deepening that sense of direction? And so in the personal realm, it's important that we connect with the sense of identity and authenticity, that we are, considering our lived experiences, centering our lived experiences, anchoring in our intersectionalities, honesty and vulnerability, and being true to ourselves, and that can be, there's a lot of richness there. In the sense of the systemic, of course, equity and inclusion are paramount to a lot of the work that is being done in the sector. But what that means also is to look at the ways that our systems are structured, and that includes our personal systems and our organizational systems, how we make decisions, the policies, procedures, and are we prioritizing marginalized voices, experiences, and access for marginalized folks? Are we practicing anti-oppression? Are we embodying integrity in the ways that we're moving forward? In the space of integration, once again, it's about healing and well-being, because I think there is this dynamic in our sector right now where we have a lot of really nice language. And this is something that a lot of folks have reflected back to me, and that I'm sure is something that you probably would have experienced in the sector as well. We've been talking a lot about equity. We've been talking a lot about inclusion, and there's a lot of language that has been developed around how we need to think about these frameworks. But what's happening on the ground level? There's the language, then there's the potential of what can be, and then there's like this space in between of like the doing and the embodying and the ground level work that needs to happen. And I think in that space of integration of these concepts into the manifestation, there's a lot of healing that needs to be done. There is a lot of healing that needs to be done internally within ourselves, within our systems, within our organizations, within the frameworks and the models of relationships that we have available to us. And so healing and well-being is really integral to this process, which is part of the reason why your worksheets are framed the ways that they are, and how we are approaching this work in terms of purpose. And of course, creativity and technique, and there's an aspect of when we go into the realm of creation, originality is important. It's important for us to think outside of the box. It's important for us to also uphold standards of excellence in the work that we're doing, applying the wisdom into the systems and approaches of our work. So this is like the dreamscape, right? Ultimately, we want to get to the place where we have healthy individuals and communities. We want to have healthy systems. We want to have holistic integration where we have models and approaches that are normalized, that are healthy and holistic, as opposed to violent and oppressive, which is kind of like the norm right now. And we're moving toward a space of freedom, unity, and power. That is the dream, right? Real empowerment, real sense of individuals that are happy and healthy and grounded in their purpose, systems that provide us with support and resources for the growth and the thriving of our communities and of all of us, right? And these models that can help us to realize what it means to embody the work of really living in harmony and the empowerment that we dream about, and the changes that need to happen. So that's the dreamscape. We got a long way to go before we can get there, but just to ground us in like the light at the end of the tunnel of why are we even doing this? What's, you know, what are we moving towards? What are we working for? And so this is the main framework that we'll be working with today, is that journey. How do we grow? How do we get to the space of making that tangible level of change? How do we ground in our purpose? How do we get to the place of embodiment? I think what's happening in the sector right now is that there's a lot of exploring and engaging, right? And when we're in the space of exploration, you're kind of looking at all the pieces, we're learning, we're looking at the possibilities. And when we're engaging, we're looking at implementing some of the things, we're testing things out, we're figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And when we do that enough, you can eventually get to the place of embodiment where equity is no longer theoretical, where equity is no longer a thing that we're testing around. How do we do? Equity becomes an embodied way of moving in the world. And I think this is the part of the challenge right now, is how do we get from the explore and engage stage to the embodiment stage? How do you embody your purpose? In terms of when it comes to your personal purpose, we first need to explore what's there, the possibilities. Then we need to engage with the different things that are out there to see what fits, what doesn't fit. And when we find that that alignment, then we can really deepen in our practice, in our purpose, in our work, and get to the stage of embodiment where eventually, when we are practiced enough in our embodiment, then we can really activate the change that is needed in the world. So as we move forward, that was a real quick and, what's it called, recap of what we spent an hour doing in the previous presentation at the conference, just to jog your memory. But today is really about you. It's really about you doing the work. It's really about you doing the reflective work and the sharing with one another. So I'm going to invite folks to create a safe space for ourselves and for one another. I always say that safe space is not something you can just declare and then it is so. It is something that is living. It is something that is breathing. It is something that can shift at any moment in time based on what's happening in the room, kind of just like consent, right? Consent is a living and breathing thing, and it can shift at any moment in time, and safe space works in that way as well. So I'm going to invite you to honor and uphold for yourself and each other. So this means creating safe space for yourself, right? To go into the space of giving yourself the space to be curious and generous and respectful and mindful toward yourself, to do this exploration, right? To give yourself permission to be in your authenticity, to be courageous, and to be honest with yourself in your self-reflection that you'll do. And holding integrity to the truth, I guess, tapping into that place of real honesty, and also to hold the space for one another. So eventually, what will happen is we'll go into breakout rooms, and you'll share. I'll give you some time to reflect and work a little bit on your worksheets before we do that. And then we'll go into a space of sharing. And so when we do that, I invite you to, be curious and respectful and generous and mindful, and holding integrity and being authentic and honest and courageous with one another as well. So if you are down for creating this intention, please type in the chat, "I'm in," just to signify that, yeah, I'm here and I'm committed to creating this safe space for myself and for others. So just in the chat, when you get a moment, just type your name, or types "I'm in," so as well. Thank you so much. All right. And that is an open invitation that will stay alive for this session. So once again, you probably by now know that there is a worksheet. If you still don't have it in front of you, because adults and multitasking, all of that stuff, you can find it here. I think, Monica, if you could put the link in the chat just one more time, just in case. Hopefully everybody has your worksheet up by now, and hopefully you've been able to look at it prior to this moment to jot down some ideas. But just in case you haven't, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes per question on the worksheet to either reflect on what you've already written or to jot down some bullet point form notes on what some of your reflections might be. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. So let's see if I can pull up the worksheet here. So we're going to kind of scroll to page 7 of the worksheet, where we have the exploration topic. Anyone having trouble with the worksheet, please let us know. I can also, I'll be putting the questions into the chat as well, just so that you have multiple forms of support. If you just have a journal, it's hard to type on the PDF or whatever. You can also handwrite, just have the questions there, get a piece of paper. Sometimes it's analog is just better for certain things. So jumping right in. The exploration journey is about personal growth and understanding of one's own identity, with the goal of being true to oneself through authenticity. This stage is about going inward to deepen into a process of grounding and soul searching. It requires an integrated approach that centers on intersectionality, honesty, and vulnerability. And when we say personal, this can be applied to an individual or an organizational context, just so that you are aware that we can use these frameworks for other things. For today, I'd like for you to focus on the personal of your individual journey as a person in an arts organizer, or just, you know, a human in the world. And I just wanted to throw in the context that we're doing this work because it's important that we are grounded in ourselves, so that we know where we're coming from when we're engaging in the larger work, right? There's like all these large concepts and all these large frameworks that we're in, these huge dreams and huge aspirations. But we really need to know who we are first, be able to do the larger work. So the first question is, what are the intersectionalities of your identity? What roles do they play in the issues that are near and dear to your heart? And so I'll give you 2 minutes. I'm actually going to set a timer for 2 minutes to just work on that. So this is a moment for you to just do some internal reflection on this question. And when we're talking about intersectionality of identity, you can think about your racial identity, gender identity. You know, what are the different segments of yourself that move through the world? About 30 seconds. Okay, and just bring your thoughts to a close around this question. Complete the last sentence that you're on. And we're going to transition to the second question that's on the page. And if you're super duper fast and you kind of want to go through at your own pace, you're welcome to do that. If you have any questions also about any of these, the words that we're using, or the language that we're using, or the framing of these questions, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat. So the second question that we'll move to now is, are you always true to yourself? What holds you back from being fully open and vulnerable with the people around you? And again, reminding you of that commitment to vulnerability and honesty with yourself. You know, this paper is just for you. So whatever you put down right now is a private reflection. I'll give you 2 minutes. You can also feel free to think about really specific examples too, when you've had challenges, perhaps around being fully open and vulnerable with people in your life. What are some specific contexts where this might be triggered or be particularly challenging for you? What those variables might be, what some of those barriers might be. And again, about 30 seconds. And wrap up the last thought, bullet, sentence that you are on. And I'm going to throw in the chat the description of the next section. So we're going to flip to the next page, scroll to the next page. Or if you actually have a physical copy, it may be a flipping. But so the next section, page 8, I believe, is the systemic context, engaging with systemic context with equity and inclusion. So in the systemic journey, we expand our lens outward to the context of greater society, history, and culture. We assess and address systems of power, privilege, oppression, and the social constructs that they form. This part of the journey is about seeking equity and inclusion for marginalized individuals and communities with transparency and integrity. So that's kind of an overview of the general realm that we are working in. But the specific question I would like for you to ask yourself is, in what ways are you privileged based on your identity? So you can refer back to some of the things that you wrote in question 1 as a reference point. In what ways do you benefit from systems of oppression? So you may consider your race, gender, sexual orientation, ability, disability, socioeconomic status, language, and other ways you are able to gain access to resources or social currency just by being who you are and walking through the world. And I'll give you 2 minutes. In about 30 seconds more to complete your thought. And if you feel complete, you can always move a little bit faster if you would like. But I do encourage you to spend the full time just really thinking about and reflecting on these areas. They're complex and there's many dynamics and variables involved. So encouraging you to do that. So bring your final thought to a close. And jot down the last bit of your ideas. And the next question is, how can you leverage your access to privilege to be more inclusive of those who are oppressed or marginalized in those same areas? So keeping in mind that intersectionality is complex, right? You may face oppression or maybe marginalized in one segment of your identity or one intersectionality of your identity, and maybe privileged in another. And so it's looking at the dynamics of, all of these intersections of the different aspects of your identity. And for now, I'd like for you to just look at how can you leverage your privilege in the areas that you may have privilege, understanding that this is not a blanket thing, right? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Again, we're coming to that 30-second mark. And a part of this process may not be necessarily having all the answers. If you find that you maybe have more questions than answers, that's perfectly fine too. If these prompts provide or kind of signal in you or bring up in you just more questions as opposed to answers to these questions, that's totally a part of the process. So feel welcome to not have to have like the answers to, all of life's mysteries right now. Moving into the next page about embodying holistic integration with healing and well-being. The embodiment journey is about integrating one's interpersonal experiences with external systemic contexts. Empowering social change at the community level requires that individuals engage in healing and well-being on a personal level, as well as on a systemic level. So coming back to that conversation around what's the missing link, and I really do feel it is the work of healing that is going to open those doors for us into real embodiment. Safety as well as holistic and trauma-informed approaches are integral to this stage. So just kind of broadening out the lens of when we do this work and we engage in this work, this is really what we're looking at is looking at generational trauma, looking at these larger things that have been passed on to us through these oppressive systems, embodying holistic integration with healing and well-being. Oh, there's like a typo there, I'm sorry. So it's also about being courageous to practice mental and emotional, physical, and spiritual health and safety. It's about holistic wellness and wholeness. So this might be a tender place for some of you, for most of us. So I encourage you to be kind with yourself as you move in to this section, because, talking about what does it mean to do the real work? Well, the real work is hard and it's tender and it's vulnerable. It's challenging. And so reflecting on the answers from the previous sections of the worksheet, and also just reflecting on this question overall, what do you need to heal? What do you personally still need to heal? Yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes. And I just want to acknowledge that this may be an uncomfortable space for some of you, and I'm going to encourage you to embrace the uncomfortability and just keep going deeper. About 20 seconds. And begin to wrap up your final thought or the last thought that you have there. And we'll go into the next question in this section. How can you take better care of yourself in the areas of your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health? Are you burnt out? Because that's a thing in our sector. And if you are, how can you embody better well-being? How can you embody better well-being? How can you take better care of yourself? So I'll give you 2 minutes to reflect on that. Coming to that 30-second mark. And begin to wrap up your thoughts of your last point. We're going to move to the next page. So this is the stage of activating the power of creation with creativity and technique. So the activation journey is the fourth and final stage where we step into the realm of creation. With the help of creativity and technique, we have an opportunity to take our power back and create into the world what we wish to see. This is about raising the bar, applying wisdom, and innovating systems with standards of excellence and artistic skill. So our first question in this realm is, what change do you wish to see in the world? So reflecting back again on all your previous answers, including the last section, all 3 sections, what is it that you're really being called to? What is your soul really wanting to create and bring to life here on earth? What's needed? What are you equipped with? What kinds of experiences do you have to bring to the world? So I'm going to start the timer again, 2 minutes. And you can think big in this section, be creative, think outside of the box, dream. And we're about 30 seconds left. And wrapping up your final thoughts in this section. All right, so we're going to move to question number 2. What skills, resources, systems, techniques, strategies do you need to employ to be able to bring your vision to life? What kinds of supports or growth do you need in order to cultivate to achieve excellence in this arena? So whatever you wrote in the first question, what do you need in terms of systems of support? What skills, resources, et cetera, do you need to be able to move this into a space of activation? And I'm going to actually move us into the next section a little bit faster this time. So complete your final thoughts on this section. And the final question is, what do you feel in this moment after having answered the questions in this worksheet? What are the emotions that are present with you? What are you inspired to do? So this is the final reflections page. What questions do you have? What have you gained clarity on? What direction is your intuition calling you to move next? So take a moment to do that. I'll give you another 2 minutes. "30 seconds. And bringing your thoughts to a close, finishing off that last sentence or thought or bullet point. I just want you to take a moment now to take a deep breath in And close your eyes and just ground into your body, connecting with your inner self and taking a moment to thank yourself for taking this moment to take this time for your growth and development. Ground in a feeling of gratitude toward yourself for this moment that you've given yourself. You're beautiful, you are powerful, you are sacred. Thank you for being all that you are. All right, so we're going to send you off into breakout rooms. You'll be in, most of you will be in groups of 3. And we're going to give you about 20 minutes in the breakout rooms to connect and share. And I'd like for you to, share your name, where you're from, your pronoun, and what you can share whatever you like. But just an easy place to start off is, what do you feel? So maybe if when you begin your sharing, you could begin with "I feel," and then whatever kind of fills in after that. And you can, take a few moments each to share any reflections that you may have. You may share some of the things that you've written, and then you can kind of go around and have a conversation. So any questions before we put you in your rooms? Okay, awesome. So Monica, please go ahead and do that. I may kind of hop around. You may see me pop in and out. So.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
You should have a notice that I'll ask you to join the room. Invite you to join the room. There they go.
We'll be there for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is a whiskey event. Phoenix, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I
That's
was just
okay.
saying, please, I encourage you to keep your cameras on for this larger group session. I think it's always lovely to be able to foster a greater sense of connection with one another, which is one of the big kind of themes that came up in the conversation that I was in with Angela, is that, you know, we need deeper connection. And I can just even see in all of your faces, you know, after having come out of your, most of us were in one-on-one conversations actually, but what genuine human relating and conversation can do for our spirit, it's really what we need more of. And so I'll ask folks to maybe, you know, go around. We'll have a moment for us to just do a larger group share for folks who feel compelled to, you know, offer what you would like into the space. What's present for you? What are you wanting to move? What are you inspired to do moving forward? And what are you committed to doing, you know, inside of yourself, if you have a sense of that moving forward? So yeah, anyone would like to volunteer? If not, I will pick on people. So I'll go with the volunteer first. Everyone's being shy. Okay, Angela, I'm gonna pick on you because I was in the room with you.
But thank you. It was definitely a pleasure being in the our conversation. And yeah, so you know, deeper connections came up as a desire. Certainly something lacking over the last year and a half that we've all had to kind of maybe be more aware of. What I would love to see is, you know, in myself practicing forms of communication or forms of, you know, presence that would help build stronger connections and deeper connections, and you know, taking ownership over what I need to do to prepare myself for that. So just not multitasking as much, and also, you know, figuring out, like, if I'm a facilitator, what is it that I can do to prepare people so that they could be wherever that is, and allow for, we also talked about allowing for sort of the play and the banter that happens when people just get together, because that kind of open space can help with finding connections and being more inspired to be a part of that.
Thank you. And I'm going to encourage people to use your raise hand function or the chat function if you would like to share. But I am going to pick on Joy.
Hello. We ended up talking about just some very specific examples. I was with Margaret. We talked about some very specific examples going on, like in her teaching, university teaching right now. And yeah, it actually ended up feeling kind of empowering, and like we kind of, when you allow yourself to kind of sit in the feelings and like all these feelings, but then it's also backed up by having educated yourself about the way the world works and the history of systemic racism and inaccessibility in our country, like then you're able to actually, this was the first time, and just being really personal, this is the first time in my experience that I actually felt empowered by my own knowledge to come up with a solution and not just sit in hopelessness and be like, what are we gonna do about it? So it was really encouraging. It was a good one.
Thank you. Annalisa. Oh, TJ, I saw your hand. So I'm gonna go with the hand, but I am coming to you, Annalisa, because I do want to hear from you. Go ahead, TJ.
So I'll let Annalisa go after me, but and Annalisa was in my group as well as Nancy, and we talked about privilege, and about especially one of the things that interested me was that Annalisa is doing an advanced degree on community arts, which is kind of fun, and the fact that Nancy and I had never heard about it before. But one of the things that I'm inspired, and part of, I mean, this has been something that's been kind of growing in me for the last 2 or 3 months probably, but I'm inspired to share it with you guys today, is that I would love to do a festival in the Chattanooga area where the theme is what connects us. How are we connected? And allow people to bring their offerings, whether it's art or music or theater, or in my case, puppets, and just really come together in the arts and in connection. So I'm throwing this out there. If any of you, especially you are here in the Chattanooga area, or even Atlanta's not that far away, I would love to connect with you and see where we can go with this, because this thrills me to no end.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Annalisa.
Thank you, Phoenix. So I guess, yeah, like we talked a lot about like the different layers of privilege and our experiences with that, and kind of our idea of where we are kind of in that journey. So it was interesting to kind of just talk a little bit more about that. And I think for myself, kind of always like, I think circles back to assessing my different layers of privilege. Like, I think I'm really inspired to make sure that I'm doing the work to understand the different like realities that I don't experience. Again, I feel like there's like, I understand myself as a racialized person and as a woman and those kind of intersections, but then there's those other things that I think I often forget, or often in the back of my mind, such as being, you know, like second generation Canadian and stuff. So yeah, like I think just where I'm at in my journey is like, you know, where you feel like you know so many things and you know it all, and then you kind of are caught with a different reality as you are exposed to different people. I feel like I'm back at that spot where I'm understanding that there's so many more realities that I need to also kind of listen to. So yeah.
Yeah, once you think you got it, you realize you don't know much, you know, that's kind of how it goes. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Anne, can I come to you?
I guess I'm the only Anne, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I have a new best friend, Natalie and I are shared. So we're exchanging emails, so we're very connected now. So we have a common ground there in terms of film. So that was really neat to discover somebody that's into that also. So it was really very nice. So, and I connected with some of my Canadian relatives with her and talked her ear off. So sorry, but she accepted it. Anyway, yeah, I was sharing with her. I downloaded this worksheet yesterday and you know, took a look at it and read it. And of course, I went back and read. I missed the last session, but I went back and listened to it. And I could hardly wait to work on this. You know, it was just, I got totally lost in it. I guess maybe it's a pandemic. I don't know, but it's just, it was the right questions at the right time for me, at least. You know, it just made refresh my memory about some studies that I'd done a number of years ago. Brought me full circle back to my studies on Joseph Campbell, for example, and the whole Jungian philosophy and what is it about us that we're striving to do on Earth, you know, the finding of the whole self. And that, I mean, just brought me full circle back to all that study. So thank you so much for bringing the workshop to us. It's the best one I've ever attended, honestly. It's just beautiful. Anyway, you know, I think at the end of the session, I felt, you asked me, the very last questions was, I guess I feel hopeful. I feel empowered. I have a lot more awareness now of how to kind of get unstuck, because the pandemic has just, even though I think I'm a positive person, it's just dragging me down badly. And so I feel like, you know, I do have the time to do certain things. And so if I can just have the discipline and not procrastinate and believe in myself, then I feel like I can move forward with an idea that's been perking in my head for years. So I'm going to try it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so
Are you,
much.
are you
Erin.
going to share what that idea is?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm going to write a story, and I'm going to write about my grandmother, my great-grandmother that I never met, but through Ancestry.com, I found a deep, dark secret that she had. And I'm the only one in the family that knows it. So I'm trying to figure out some way to tell that story in a way that it evolves in a way that that person is actually me. I don't know how to describe it, but you know, I don't want to hurt my ancestor, you know, but anyway, it's something that's been perking in my head for a very long time. And so, you know, my love of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey has just brought it back to me. So just, it peeled back this memory I had in my head about that. So anyway, that's where I am right now.
Cheering you
We'll see.
on, Erin. Yes, and to bring those stories out, you know, I think I believe that our ancestors are cheering us on too. You know, they had their time, they lived the life they did, and they left us with the memories, whether they are in ourselves or through the stories that are told. And there is a legacy there and a lot of healing also that I think is part of the reason why we are here. I'm gonna go to your bestie next. Natalie, would you like to share?
Yes, well, I think Anna and I are twin souls, so this workshop brought us together.
She's in my will. She's in my will now.
This is recorded, Anne.
I know.
Documented.
I'm in trouble.
No, it was just wonderful to share because I've also felt very stuck. Pandemic or not, I don't know. It's been a while, and so like I was sharing with Anne, the timing of this workshop has just been perfect because I am feeling this calling to move forward and stop feeling like there is no hope. I think it's so important for us creatives to bring the change that this world needs. And yeah, we just have to believe in it. And yeah, I think that the depth of this workshop is so important. So thank you so much for helping us go to those places that are uncomfortable, because that's what I think in my experience anyway, is what I need to move forward. So thank you. It was wonderful, and it was wonderful to share with Anne.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for being here. And if you didn't get a chance to vocally share, I'm going to invite you to put in the chat a last thought, or, you know, something that is present with you. And even if you did share vocally and you have other thoughts that you would like to share with the group, I'm going to really encourage you to use the chat to share some of your thoughts with us. And I'm just so inspired by the connections that are happening in this space, and the warmth and the genuine generosity of spirit that's happening in this space, that, you know, just in such a short span of time that you've opened yourself up to one another. And I think that's really what we need. You know, we talk about, you know, and Angela and I were talking about this in our conversation, right? Like, how do we get to the place where we're embodying the work? Well, we gotta open up, y'all. We gotta do the vulnerability thing. We have to do the vulnerability thing. We have to do the honesty thing. We have to do the authenticity thing, because otherwise we're just gonna be in the default of what's been passed down to us. And the default of what's been passed down to us is censoring, silencing, hiding behind masks, being in a space of competition and fear of judgment, fear of not being accepted, fear of being rejected, because that's actually a lived experience, right? So it's not like it comes from nowhere, that we have these fears for no reason. They're real because these are experiences that we've all been through, and that's because of the system, It's because of the cultural context of the system that we live within, you know, and this competitiveness is a marker of colonization. The division is a marker of colonization. Isolation and being on your own and just being out for yourself is a marker of colonization. So there's a lot of talk right now in our sector about decolonizing. And we can start with decolonizing our language, and that's a great place to start. But it can't end there. We have to decolonize the ways that we are moving through the world. We have to decolonize the ways that we're engaging with our emotions. We have to decolonize the ways that we are engaging in our relationships, that it's not just transactional, but it's truly relational and community-based and collectivity-based, and a shared sense of, you know, really just like taking off the mask and being like, oops, sorry, taking off the mask and being like, I'm here, me, like me, right? But before you can take off that mask and be like, I'm here, me, to others, we need to be able to do that in our own private spaces, because also what the system has taught us to do is to be so ashamed of ourselves that we can't even have that conversation with ourselves. And that's what we need to be walking in and exemplifying and modeling to our children, to our communities. But we can't model something that we haven't experienced or that we haven't done ourselves. So that's the challenge to you. You know, in your day-to-day, even in the smallest moments, in the smallest mundane moments of opportunity, how can you be more authentic? How can you be more genuine? How can you be more vulnerable? How can you be more honest with yourself and with the people around you? And so I leave that challenge with you, you know, and it's not even a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's more of an invitation to step deeper into your purpose. Because without that honesty and authenticity, you can't be in your purpose, because that's pure alignment of your true self. And it does take vulnerability and it takes courage. So thank you all so much for being a part of this space, being a part of this workshop. You can reach out to me. I'll put my contact in the chat. And, you know, at Voice of Purpose, we are building spaces for us to continue to build these kinds of conversations and connection with one another across the sector. So send me an email if you want to stay connected, and I can kind of plug you into some of our other things that are going on. And yeah, thank you so much. Monica, thank you. Thank you, Arts Build. And I'm going to pass it to you if you have any last closing thoughts you'd like to share as well.
Well, no, thank you, Phoenix. This has been a pleasure to work with you on the Equity in the Arts Conference and also on this session as well, and to get to know you better. Thank you to everyone who has attended and also came to the follow-up session. We will send out this recording to you as well as the others who signed up and weren't able to make it today. Feel free to reach out to Phoenix, like she said, for any questions, and you have my email as well to reach out to us. And we just really appreciate your partnership with Artsfield. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.